NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, presents Aeronautics and Space Report.
At NASA's Langley Research Center in Virginia, model airplanes are serious business. Highly instrumented craft like this one can be put through the most rigorous tests without endangering the life of a test pilot or losing a valuable plane. When the instrumentation checkout is completed, a parachute is placed under the tail so the model can be recovered for additional flights. Next, the model is carefully mounted on a helicopter. Today's test calls for a drop from about 5,000 feet. Meanwhile, the tracking and radio controlling gear has moved into position. 4 men operate these converted .50 caliber machine gun mounts, 2 trackers and 2 pilots. The trackers always keep the model in sight as it drops. The pilots each have radio control boxes on their laps. One man controls the model's pitch and wing sweep, while the other operates the rudder and ailerons. During this test, the model is allowed to dive or fall until it is simulating flight speeds. Then, the radio controllers on the ground pull out and stall the model to see if it goes into a spin. They have about 25 seconds to complete their maneuvers before the main parachutes deploy, lowering the model gently to the ground. Radio-controlled drops like these help prove out planes of the future with today's research. This is scientist astronaut Dr. Edward G. Gibson.
Well, I got into the program 2 years ago, perhaps the smallest group of individuals that got in, the 4th group, and here the NASA was looking for people with primarily scientific backgrounds in order to gain some capability in the field for the applications which were to come later. The title, of course, is a scientist astronaut, which really implies perhaps a higher proficiency in the science end than in the piloting end. However, the group is really not that distinct from the other groups in that both types of groups, the pilots and the scientists, both have a proficiency in the other area. The only question is to what degree. Having primarily a basic scientific background, they felt it worthwhile for us to get some pilot experience, which after going through 1 year of flight school at Williams Air Force Base as a civilian and getting Air Force wings, we feel it's an extremely worthwhile thing also.
Like all the astronauts, Dr. Gibson is put through many phases of training for spaceflight.
Program, this involves a scientific background plus operational background. Scientific in that we go through a little classroom work in geology, a little field exercises in geology, and operational from the standpoint that we get acquainted with the total manned space flight system from launch on into recovery. We do this through simulations and also through just visits to the facility to become acquainted with what we're working with.
About going to the moon, astronaut Gibson, a physicist, had this to say.
I would also like to go to the moon, of course. Each person in the program has to decide where he can best utilize his background. And in asking that question, I feel I can best use it by using the solar physics I have in my background. However, if someone says, let's put a telescope on the moon's surface, then I'm the first one who's going to be in line.
This has been an Aeronautics and Space Report presented by NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.